each, totaling 12 for WrestleMania 2. The main event in Unionsdale was a boxing match pitting Mr. T from the A-Team against Rowdy Roddy Piper. In Chicago, the main event saw the WWF Tag Team Champions, the Dream Team, Greg the Hammer Valentine and Brutus Beefcake, defend their titles against the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid. And the main event in LA featured WWF Heavyweight Champion Hulk Hogan defending his title in a steel cage against King Kong Bundy. The undercard in Unionsdale also saw WWF Intercontinental Champion the Macho Man Randy Savage defend his title against George the Animal Steele, while the event in Chicago featured a 20-man battle royal involving both WWF wrestlers and National Football League players, primarily from the Chicago Bears. In the first match of the show in New York, Paul Orndorff faced off against the magnificent John Morocco. In the early part of the match, Orndorff body slammed Morocco. As the crowd reacted and Orndorff celebrated, he turned towards Mr. Fuji and made a racist slanty-eyed gesture followed by an Italian salute. This controversial moment is edited out of most home video versions of the match and is also edited out of the version shown on the WWE Network. Both men fought to a double countout. Next up was a WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship match between the Macho Man Randy Savage and George the Animal Steele, where Savage was seconded by his real-life wife, Miss Elizabeth. Late in the match, Steele became the first man to ever kick out of Savage's signature elbow from the top turnbuckle. Savage pinned Steele with a roll-up and put both of his feet on the ropes for leverage, something that he'd done at WrestleMania 1 as well. As a result, Savage retained the Intercontinental title and would hold it through until WrestleMania 3 and his classic match with Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Next up was Jake the Snake Roberts versus George Wells, pretty much a squash match. Roberts hit a DDT on Wells and pinned him to win the match. After the match, Roberts allowed his snake Damien to slither all over Wells, who foamed at the mouth. 0 stars for this one. The final match in New York was the boxing match between Mr. T and Rowdy Roddy Piper. Mr. T was seconded by boxer Joe Frazier, while Piper was seconded by boxing trainer Lou Duva. Piper was disqualified for body slamming Mr. T at the 1 minute 15 mark and the match ended. Now, if I was in that New York crowd, I would demand my money back. As is customary at WrestleMania, celebrities were out in force, including Joan Rivers, Elvira and Ray Charles. So, the action moved over to Chicago, and the first match was for the WWF Women's Championship, contested between the 9,332-year-old Fabulous Moolah and Velvet McIntyre. McIntyre attempted to splash on Moolah from the second turnbuckle, but Moolah sidestepped and McIntyre missed the move. Moolah took advantage and pinned McIntyre to retain her title. Second match of the evening in Chicago was a flag match between Corporal Kirshner and Nikolai Volkov. Classy Freddie Blassie seconded Volkov and he threw his cane to Volkov, but Kirshner caught it and hit Volkov with it and then pinned him for the victory. Short and sweet. Next up was a 20-man battle royal involving WWF wrestlers and NFL players including Jim Covert, Bill Fralick, Russ Francis, Ernie Holmes, Harvey Martin and the famous William the Refrigerator Perry. WWF stars included Andre the Giant, Ted Akidi, Tony Atlas, the Hart Foundation, Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart, the Killer Bees, B. Brian Blair and Jim Brunzell, Hillbilly Jim, the Iron Sheik, King Tonga, Pedro Morales, Bruno Sammartino, Danny Spivey and Big John Studd. At the end of the match, Andre the Giant and both members of the Hart Foundation were the final 3 participants. Andre first eliminated Neidhart and then the Hitman to win the Battle Royal. The final match in Chicago was a WWF Tag Team Championship match between the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid, and the Dream Team, Greg Valentine and Brutus Beefcake. Ex-Black Sabbath lead singer Ozzy Osbourne and Lou Albano accompanied the Bulldogs to the ring. After 13 minutes of back and forth action, Smith pushed Valentine into the corner where Valentine knocked heads with Dynamite Kid. Kid fell to the floor while Smith pinned Valentine to win the tag titles and end the Dream Team's 7-month reign as champions. It was now time for the final leg of WrestleMania 2 as we headed over to Los Angeles, where there were 4 more matches. Ricky Steamboat faced off against Hercules in the first match. Hercules tried to hit a flying body press but missed, and the Dragon followed by hitting a body press of his own for the pinfall and the victory. Following that, Adrian Adonis, accompanied by Jimmy Hart, defeated Uncle Elmer after a diving headbutt. Less said about that the better. And then we had the Funk Brothers facing off against Junkyard Dog and Tito Santana in a tag match. Jimmy Hart again accompanied the Funk Brothers. Hoss Funk distracted the referee. Jimmy Hart took advantage and gave his megaphone to Terry Funk, who hit Junkyard Dog and then pinned him to get the win. 0 again. Finally, we reached the main event of WrestleMania 2 for the WWF Heavyweight Championship in a steel cage. Hulk Hogan defended his title against King Kong Bundy. Hogan's ribs were heavily taped due to an assault by Bundy on the March 1st, 1986 edition of Saturday Night's Main Event 5, where Bobby Heenan had accompanied Bundy to the ring. At the start, Bundy removed the tape from Hogan's ribs. However, Hogan fought back and rammed Bundy's head into the steel cage. He tried to hit a scoop slam on Bundy but missed. Bundy hit an avalanche and a big splash on Hogan. However, Hogan hulked up and hit a power slam on Bundy, followed by a leg drop. He climbed the steel cage, but Bundy caught his leg. Hogan kicked Bundy and climbed over the top of the steel cage and down to the floor to win the match and retain his title. After the match, Hogan caught Heenan inside the cage as Bundy was reeling from the match. Hogan slammed Heenan's head into the cage before atomic dropping him outside. So once again, an absolute cluster F of an event. WWE would do well to just remove this from the network. It's appalling. The only redeeming fact I think it has about this is the Savage and Steel match, possibly the Battle Royal, but everything else is just utter pony. Do I recommend? Absolutely not. However, up next, WrestleMania 3, things take a bit of a step in the right direction.